Welcome. You're watching The Big Question. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. The first sign of a coward is someone who attacks an innocent. The terrorists who have attacked tourists in Kashmir are more cowards than anything else. Because for these 26 tourists and their families, what was supposed to be a vacation has turned into a nightmare. Here's what's happened. Terrorists opened fire upon Indian tourists at a meadow near Pahalgam in Jammu and Kashmir. A proxy group of the Lashkar-e-Taiba has claimed responsibility for the attack. Among the dead, a Navy officer who was married just about a week ago, a father from Odisha who was on vacation with his family, a businessman from Karnataka, and many others who came in to soak the beauty of the Kashmir Valley. A day after the attack, a massive hunt has been launched to locate the terrorists, with the Army, CRPF and Jammu and Kashmir Police cordoning off the area. Security has been heightened, military choppers have been pressed immediately into service. NIA has taken over the matter of the probe. Prime Minister Modi, who was in Saudi Arabia during the time of the attack, cut short his visit, returned to India. He also met a high-level meeting with Foreign Minister Jaishankar, NSA Ajit Doval. In a post on X, he vowed that those behind this heinous act will be brought to justice. Their evil agenda will never succeed. Home Minister Amit Shah too has been on the ground since the attack. Today he visited the site of the attack to take stock of the situation and said Bharat will not bend to terror. The Home Minister also laid wreaths on the bodies of the 26 tourists who were killed and met the survivors and victims' kin as well. Now, even as we all hope, pray and follow, and we're sure that India will exact revenge, what becomes very important to understand is why tourists were attacked. The Pahalgam terror attack hits at the heart of the valley's tourism sector, which has shown consistent growth since 2019. In fact, the number of tourists have risen by 45% from 1.62 crores in 2019 to a whopping 2.35 crores last year. Tourism was not just an economic lifeline, but was seen as one of the most significant indicators of normalcy in the region. And this is what is bothering these terror groups. The attack comes in the beginning of the peak tourist season in the valley, took place at Pahalgam, a destination that is on every tourist list. Pahalgam is also significant as it serves as one of the routes to the Amarnath cave, which attracts lakhs of pilgrims every year. And that journey and that pilgrimage is also slated to begin from July this year. The attack is bound to have significant ramifications, of course, for the economy of Kashmir, for the tourism sector, which has slowly emerged from the long shadow cast by terror attacks. Already there are reports of people cancelling their travel plans to the valley. Airlines have also waived cancellation charges, rescheduling fees after the DGCA intervened. Remember, there has been a massive push by the central government to promote Kashmir as a tourist destination post the abrogation of Article 370. Infrastructure and other facilities in the state are being improved to attract tourists. Srinagar hosted the G20 Tourism Working Group meeting in May 2023. Rail services are being rapidly developed to ensure better connectivity between Kashmir and the rest of the country. Bollywood was back shooting films against scenic Kashmiri backdrops. But all of that has now perhaps been hit with the recent attack. The big question we're asking today, can we let these terrorists win by stopping the progress of tourism and economy that we've seen in Kashmir? How do we ensure that the terrorists don't succeed in their mission to derail Kashmir's economic progress? Because that is at the heart of what they're targeting. To speak on this, I'm joined today by Rauf Trambu. He's President, Travel Agents Association of Kashmir. Dr. Ejaz Wani, Fellow at ORF, is joining us. Speaking with Shashank, former Foreign Secretary of India, and Madan Sabnavis, Chief Economist at Bank of Baroda. Welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us today. While there is a lot of coverage everywhere on the details of the strike, and of course what India will do next, the reason that we are choosing to focus on the economics of this is not only because we are a business channel, but it's also because that is at the heart of normalcy, and that is what is really a true end to terrorism, isn't it? Rauf Trambu, I want to come to you first on what we've seen as peaceful protests from local Kashmiris today against these dastardly attacks?
First of all, ma'am, let me thank you for having me in your program. And at the outset, I would like to, say that whole Kashmir Valley, for that matter, across Jammu and Kashmir, people are in mourning since yesterday after hearing this, gruesome incident, which is condemnable and which is every walk of the life in Kashmir Valley and in Jammu areas condemn this gruesome killings, which was, it was a shock to all of us, having a peaceful atmosphere since last many years, which allowed us to grow tourism proportionately with other industry. Yes, this of Kashmir Valley as well as all over Jammu and Kashmir.
This is the thing. Why tourists? It's important to understand why tourists. Of course, for the outsized attention that it attracts. Of course, it happened while the Vice President of the United States, J.D. Vance, is here, and all of those reasons as well. But Mr. Shashank, I want to come to you to understand, why this is a different attack than others. Because not only were innocent tourists targeted, their names were asked, their identities were found, and then they were just shot in cold blood.
Yeah, there are two main reasons. One is that when Article 370 was removed, central government had taken control of the administration and security of the state. But for the last 1 year, we have a elected government. But the elected government feels it does not have the responsibility to provide security to the tourists and others who are coming. The central government feels that it should keep on pushing more and more tourists into Jammu and Kashmir to show that there has been a successful experiment to abolish 370. So therefore, I think this has become really fallen between two stools, where nobody is interested in taking care of the security. They are only talking about the general atmosphere of goodwill and people traveling, earning money. Everybody's earning money. But I think what happens is that in democracy, either each individual has to be responsible to keep the democracy going, or if they cannot look after it themselves, they cannot become themselves experts in using guns, then they should at least take private security. I think in several countries, you have private security companies, which can come from any other part of the country to provide security to groups of tourists who are traveling. So I think I would request Mr. Trambu to suggest to his colleagues that perhaps the tour operators in Kashmir should take responsibility for this.
Mr. Shashank, I'm sorry to say, but it's not about Mr. Trambu and private security. It is about the message being given to a nation today. And the message being given to a nation is that we will not allow you to normalize things in Kashmir. We will not allow the people of Kashmir. We will not allow the people of Kashmir to go about their lives.
No,
so I don't know if it's about. I don't know if it's about private security more than giving an answer that yes, we will go about our business. Because that's the biggest answer. I want to get Dr. Ijaz Wani into this just for a second. Dr. Ijaz Wani, I want your perspective on this. On why we are seeing this attack on tourism very clearly, and of course the impact has happened. You've already seen cancellations. 25% cancellations have already come in. Tourists will be scared to go. Those who are there will want to leave. But look at the extent of tourism that boomed in Kashmir in just a few years.
Thank you for having me in this debate. It is my first appearance on any debate. So give me 2 minutes to show what is happening and why this happened. After 2019, everything changed in Kashmir. The security apparatus, the administrative apparatus, everything was going in a good way, and tourism also increased. Even within the valley, we saw the change among the youth, because the youth after 2019, you find more Indianness within the Kashmiri youth as compared to before 2019. So Pakistan was trying to radicalize Kashmiri youth in a way that their proxy war keep going against Indian interests. And once those terror groups like Lashkar-e-Taiba Chief and JEM failed, Asif Munir, the guy from madrasas, came in front, used two-nation theory, and said that we will support Kashmiris at every level. Gave a boost to those terrorists who were already present in Kashmir, and they heinous crime they did yesterday was not against Indians, it was against Kashmiris, because Kashmiris have come out of this conflict of 35 years. I being brought up in that conflict, I know how they work, because Kashmiris were given up guns, they have given up stone pelting and everything. Now this came at a time when we see GDP of India, it is 7.7%, and Kashmir was developing at 7.8%, and even more than people say that 1 million, 1.5 million. To me, around 2.5 million people are directly involved in tourism. They get their bread and butter from tourism. So this attack was orchestrated by Pakistani army to sabotage the economic development, economic progress.
No, so that's important to remember, because you don't have recruits. The youth want to find work. Why will they come and be part of your schemes? And
I will give you data. I will give you data.
Yeah.
In 2023 and 24, only 10 youth joined militancy. And today, if you see, most of the terrorists are FTs. They are not getting food anywhere. They are not coming to urban areas. They are remaining in jungles. They are being trained by Pakistani army, and their psychology have been made to remain in jungles and wait for our orders to go for killing. And the heinous crime yesterday they did, more than 28 people died in that incident, and it take everyone by surprise. Even at
this link
time,
is important. This link is important. Madan Sabnavis, this is why, and I'm glad that you've joined this conversation, because we need to have variety of kind of voices to understand what is being targeted here. Why are we saying that the economy, the peace, and the tourism was a target? Because that's the path to end extremism, isn't it? You give people livelihood, you give people hope, and that's what they want to take away.
So you're absolutely right out here, because since 2019, the pace of economic development which we have seen in Jammu and Kashmir, especially the Kashmir part, has been quite phenomenal. If you see the kind of investments which have been made by the government on infrastructure, I think that is something which would be an envy of any other state. So I think there's been special attention which has been paid by the government to make sure that we're able to move towards normalcy. And what is normalcy in a state like Kashmir? Kashmir was always known for being a tourist destination, and that is something which took a back seat when we had these terrorist activities for over 3 decades. So what we have really seen is that a state has made a lot of progress in terms of not just the infrastructure which has come in, but also in terms of tourism. And this also means, as we mentioned by one of the co-panelists, it has created a lot of employment opportunities. So we've actually seen a situation where I think Kashmir seemed to be almost comparable to that of any other state. And this is a kind of a progress which has been made under normal conditions. So I think this particular attack which we have seen will definitely push things back, because the fear psychosis has come in, and we're not quite sure as to how soon people will get over it and will continue to look at Kashmir as a favored tourism destination.
So that's the important bit. I want to come to the prescription now, and what we can do and what we should do, because frankly, if you let the entire progress get derailed, in a sense, you've let them win, right? You've let those who want to spread terror, you've let them win. If tourists stop going, if everything shutters, if the economy shuts down and you go back to what it was before, then they have made their point. So let me come back to you, Mr. Sabnavis, just on this point. What do we need to do now to make sure that they have been defeated, not only militarily, which will happen, but also the idea of fear that they're trying to spread?
So there are two things out here. One, which the government definitely has control. And I say government, it's both the state as well as center, where you beef up security, just like what it was prior to 2019, where you would be seeing police and military personnel all across the valley, across the routes which were taken by tourists. The second part is, of course, more difficult because it's going to be how do we make sure that people like you and I will keep Kashmir high on the agenda at this particular point of time, because this kind of an incident definitely does work on our psychology. And given the fact that there are a number of tourism destinations which are there in India, the question could always be that why should I risk my life and go to Kashmir? I can go to some other hill station in Himachal or Uttarakhand. So I think this is something which is going to take time. So it remains to be seen whether this particular attack is more deep-rooted in terms of affecting our psyche, and is it going to keep us away, or will people still take a positive view if there is assurance coming from the government saying that, look, you come over here, security has been beefed up, we will ensure that nothing happens. Because we've seen in the past also that tourists were not targeted as much as the police forces or the military. So we need to at least create that. So it definitely mean a lot of work in terms of rebuilding this kind of trust, which the people need to have in the security forces before we continue going to Kashmir.
Yeah, and Mr. Rauf, from the point of view of how crucial this is for the local population as well?
As a tourism player, we see it, like as I already said, last few years we had a very peaceful atmosphere here. That was the reason people started, coming to Kashmir Valley for their vacations. And last year, 2024 was unprecedented rush, and before that also. And this year, all our inventory was booked till June, till the month of June. And everyone was, glued with this industry. And another thing which is very important to know here that, tourism, Kashmir being, this industry, only viable industry for, most importantly for the valley. We have here, two main, economic activities. One is the horticulture, and other one is this tourism industry. And you would believe in the last couple of years, because of this huge, tourism rush, our economy, as Speaker rightly said, our GDP, got very high here. And those people, we consider here the first industry in Kashmir Valley, for that matter, is the horticulture. And because as it is a cash crop and people are getting benefits out at the source of this, crop. But because of growing tourism, many people in Kashmir since last couple of years, they have, cut down the size of their trees. They have chopped the trees and, started building the hotels in those orchards and all that. So such was a huge impact. So this is the one reason maybe the enemies of peace, they were knowing that the people of Kashmir are now back to their economy and they're living in a peaceful atmosphere, and they try to, create such a blow to this peace that our innocent
what can be done? What can be done to defeat this idea roundly? And of course, it will take time. Dr. Wani, let me come to you on this point, because you made the point about how they just want fodder for their cannon, and if the Kashmiri youth are busy making their lives, then they don't have that fodder for their cannon. How do we ensure that what they want to do is defeated?
See, terrorism will remain in Kashmir, because unless there is no Pakistan, there will be no terrorism. Given our borders with Pakistan, either we have to take Pak back, and that is not possible this time. But strategically, we have to see clear. We have to first have clear thought. Who is responsible for those attacks? Whether these are terrorists or Pakistani establishment, that is Pakistani army and ISI. First of all, once we will have the strategic thought, clarity about these attacks, then we can have the medicine. We can try to have medicine. For me, there are certain gaps, organizational gaps within the security establishment of Kashmir, which we have to fill up as soon as possible. For example, we have to change the jurisdiction of army at the sectorial level. as terrorists are using the jurisdiction between the two brigades of the army for movement in the forests. So we have to see.
I'm sure these logistic gaps will now be closed. I'm sure these logistic gaps will now be closed. And after an event of this scale, it's quite obvious that people will ask that why were these tourists left unattended, etc. What was the intelligence situation? The fact is that things returned to normal and terrorists wanted to disrupt the peace. I want to come back to you, Mr. Sabnavis, just on this point on how important a weapon, and we're talking about this because this is a war now, in terms of a counter assault, how important a weapon does a flourishing economy also become when you're dealing with terror like this?
See, the problem here is that we had terrorism in Kashmir for a very long period of time. This thing has been brought under control from 2019 onwards. We've seen things returning to normal. So it's also a case of saying that how do we actually continue to make sure that people feel that things are normal? There are no longer these kind of threats which are there in this particular state. And I think a lot of this will also depend upon the state government, because I think it is necessary for the state government to also ensure that if it is to be continued economic growth in the state in terms of creating jobs, in terms of increasing income, to make sure that the state is prosperous, there will have to be adequate kind of security which will have to be provided. Probably it should be 24/7 security, because anything which affects tourism affects the heart of the economy, and we'll be actually going back to square one at the time when there was high level of unemployment. There were not too many tourists coming in, there was not too much money being spent there, and the economy kept stagnating. So this kind of a turnaround which we have seen is definitely, it has ramifications, as has been mentioned by one of the panelists, that I think there is a lot of intervention by one of our neighboring countries. Now, that is something which has to be taken on at a different level. But at the economic level, I think we'll have to ensure that things return to normal as soon as possible. And we should remember that given the legacy issues which we have in Kashmir, the same thing cannot really be compared to, say, the kind of attacks which we had in Mumbai. Maybe around 15 years back or so, when we had terrorists coming in, because it was a case of a normal place where we had terror attack. There was fear for some time, but everything returned to normal in a week's time. Whereas here we're talking of a legacy of around 35 years of terrorism, normalcy coming for 5 years. And it looked like that we didn't really need to have that kind of security to make sure that people were encouraged to go to the state. Now, we could probably be pushed back by a few years.
In terms of the impact also for the local economy, Madan, do you see an outsized impact, at least to start with? Because a lot of the local economy is also dependent on tourism.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Everything is dependent on tourism today, because we're talking of the houseboats, you're talking of the hotels, you're talking of the taxis, which are your taxis, buses, which are used to ferry tourists from one place to the other. I think everything is going to be pushed back very, very significantly. Now, how soon is one going to recover, are tourists going to recover and say, okay, we will go back to Kashmir, is something which remains to be seen. That's why I do the parallel with Bombay, where Mumbai wasn't really affected. People continued to go to the Taj Hotel. People were not deterred from doing it because one knew it was an isolated incident. But here there will always be this fear that this is something which could be repeated. So that's the reason why we need this kind of reassurance, which has to come in a big manner from the point of view of security. Because otherwise, the people who suffer ultimately will be the citizens of Kashmir, because you'll be going back to the pre-2019 days when there were few jobs, there were few opportunities, and maybe that itself could be something which could be tempting the unemployed. Keep looking at other ways of earning an income rather than through the official channels.
That's the point, that the youth of Kashmir should not be left again without employment and then be sucked in by these terrorist groups. And thank you to everyone for joining us on the show. The reason that we are focusing on the economic impact of this is because how do you put a stop to these devious intentions? By just making them irrelevant. And the kind of boom that we saw in the Kashmiri economy, in tourism especially, with tourists flocking to this place, really made a change. I'm sure we will persist and bring back that change once again. Thank you so much to all of you for watching.